So, hello everybody. This is Bob Ost. This is our Friday community gathering. It's March 5th. We're almost at the year. We started these April 17th, so we're coming up to a 1 year anniversary, and hopefully in April 17th, the 1 year anniversary will also be a time when there is some return to normal, a little bit of normalcy. New York is planning on opening up theaters April 2nd. Don't love the idea. I love it from a certain point of view, but from the other point of view, I'm just wondering whether we're all moving too fast with this. We have to all continue to be taking care of ourselves and taking care of each other. That's the priority, I think. But at least we're edging towards something that's going to be a return to normal. I've been doing this every week now, and I've actually invited Murray Davis, who's on my board, to co-host with me today. So Murray, say hello.
Hello. Good to be here. Thrilled to be here. And still answering questions about our gala from people who attended, who loved it. I mean, I feel like I'm living and breathing it still.
Well, since you were there, and since we're going to be talking about the gala, but we're really going to be talking about the process, not the gala itself.
Yeah.
So what we're here to talk about today is how to create virtual theater, which we tried to do with True, with a benefit, and we had some degree of success, according to many people. So let's talk about the new relationships that we have created during this virtual era that we're in. What does a producer do now on virtual? What is different about what you do now as opposed to what you did with live theater? How are tech people suddenly part of the whole picture for this? We used to have a stage manager, and we used to have sometimes a production manager who sort of oversaw the technical aspects of live theater, and that would be lighting, sets, costumes, sound, that sort of thing. Now, the roles are a little different. Iben, why don't you start off and talk about how tech has changed the job descriptions in theater?
I'm going to start with the stage manager. The stage manager is, in my book, a Zoom manager now, or something similar to that. It's also director of photography, someone who is viewing the performance through a cinematic lens. The producer, I'll leave that, there's so many good ones here on this panel, but I think the producer's role is not that far from what it used to be. The director has a huge change because they have to also start looking at it from a cinematic viewpoint. And for the actor, it's even worse, as in they have to understand that the camera is both the other actors, but it's also the audience. So how do you distinguish those two things? Over and out.
Over and out. Okay. Well, that Murray. So jump in because you
Okay.
saw the benefits. So what did you see that was different and new for you as an audience member?
Oh my God. I've seen Zoom go from the basics of just, getting on to a meeting or hosting something to the fact of being able to utilize the space that they're in as if it were a stage. It's changed. I mean, when I was talking about tape and everything and Neil Davidson's show, that was back towards the end of last year. And that was an advance. And what happened at our gala was taken heads and shoulders beyond, even to the point where people are still asking me, how did that couch get put in for Playboy? I mean, Game Boy. It's drastic. It's a drastic difference because, and if it keeps moving the way it's moving, conceivably, it's going to hold its own. Zoom is not going away, but the ability to put something on that feels like theater, because that's what I felt like when I was watching a lot of the performances. I felt like I was actually, except the fact I'm sitting in my own apartment, I was actually sitting in a theater watching something on a stage, which has not happened before. And that's a rarity, but I think I think we just scratched the surface, and it's going to continue exponentially.
Well, let me bring Carley into this, because Carley, you were the tech person on Game Boy. So
Yes.
and the other thing is that's interesting is that you had not done theater before, because when I contacted you, you said, "Oh, why are you contacting me? I do dance."
Yes, I work a lot more with dance, although I've worked with theater artists over the past like year or so. So I have like a little bit of knowledge of it, but I also have worked in film. So that kind of, all of these three things kind of came together. But yes, a little new to theater.
So how did you approach this? I was the person that sort of threw everybody together, but then you had to figure out what to do.
Right. Well, we started out with what the writer wanted, what the playwright wanted, and Melissa said she wanted it to look like they were just in their own place hanging out. And so we were like, okay, how do we make it look like they're just in their own place when, they're in two different places? And you could do the two people in their own screen in their own place, but we said, what if we try to make it look like they're in the same place? And from there it became, sorting through the tech of that. And I think everything stemmed from that one idea that the playwright wanted, though, and every tech decision kind of veered out from there.
How sure were you at the beginning that you were going to be able to do it?
Okay, I had to talk to Iben a lot. Iben helped me so much throughout it because I hadn't worked with a green screen before, like, just to be honest. So I was like, okay, now we're going to put them on green screen, and then I'm going to have to edit with green screen. So I guess going into it, I was definitely like, let's learn a bunch of new things. And there was a lot of moments throughout the process too that we were like, how are we going to be able to do this? Like, there was a bagel that had to get from one person's set to the other person's hand. And these things that you wouldn't even think twice about during theater, it just happens. It's the bagel, whatever. It became this whole thing that this hurdle we had to get over. And there were multiple things like that.
Along those lines, for the producers, if you can tell me, because we know what a producer does on a stage and all the elements that exist with that job, a lot of which is not here in virtual, what was the experience like? How did it differ?
I know.
Yeah.
I know for me, as a relatively new producer in these terms, I mean, I've done smaller productions, for example, producing my own cabaret act and things like that. But coming into this medium, I found myself to be more so a facilitator. And as I produced both two pieces, it was two very different experiences. I was happy to know that Game Boy, I felt that they really had things under control, or at least they seemed like they did. They played it off well enough to make me feel, okay, they're going to be okay. They know exactly what it is that they're attempting to do. And I will check in every now and then to make sure that things are going okay. I felt myself a little bit more hands-on with a woman's perspective, and partly because I wanted to be sure that Regina Taylor was taken care of. And I also felt that our director's vision, Van's vision, it was pretty massive. I'm sure Iben would agree, and so I think it really, really required that sort of group effort. And I was much more involved in that process. But overall, the experience, I think it was a learning experience for everybody. I think whether it was in the moment or in advance, I think we were learning things as we went. There were things that were prepared and things that just were not. And I think from every perspective, the technologists, from my perspective as a producer, the director, and the actors, everybody learned a new skill. And that's not a bad thing, to walk away having learned a new skill.
That's great. Jonathan?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think facilitator is a great word for it. I think, so I also did two different projects at the same time. I was on Change of Plans and Zoom. and was a bit more hands-on with the change of plan, just because I think we had a lot of technical challenges with that particular piece. Zoom, was 5 minutes, had actors in front of a still background, and change of plans was 15-ish minute piece that involved a lot of moving around and whatnot. So a lot of it was facilitating, making sure the group, the director and the writer felt that they were being heard and that their vision was coming out. I think also once we had actors involved, kind of coordinating the rehearsals and making sure the technologists got enough time with each actor while we had them. So there's, it kind of felt like a kind of an overseer manager, and then also sort of working within the serving the benefit and making sure that I'm sort of a midway between the creative team and the needs of the benefit, and making sure that they're cooperating with each other. So
That's an important point. I mean, that was very specific to this benefit too, because there were a lot of moving parts, and it was kind of the producer's job. It was all of our jobs, but it was to make sure that people were thinking in terms of the whole picture. It's very easy for people to focus on their piece of it and make choices that don't really take into account how it fits into the whole evening. So I think that I was trying to communicate that to the producers, and you were my funnel to the rest, to your teams. I was trying to tell you what needed to happen, and hoping that you would believe me. Claudia, you only did one piece. Shame on you, only one piece. Talk about your experience with it.
Well, it was great. And I've been a producer, a director, a producing director, a teacher. I've done pretty much everything in theater, but not much in film and TV and stuff like that. So for me, it was an interesting hybrid form, which drew on everything I've done anytime, anywhere, which I loved and was also challenging. I knew I was going to be a liaison with everybody else and the rest of you, since we were, one of the moving parts of a benefit, and a facilitator, and deal with the business aspect. Something interesting to me was that as a producer, I didn't generate this project. So, my input was different. If I had cast it or chosen the creative team and done stuff like that a creative producer would do, then that would have been a different set of circumstances. So it was important that we formed a team, even though we weren't all picked by one person. There wasn't one overlook. Well, yes, okay. But
I picked you.
Right, that's true. But I mean, when we worked together, we had to create our own little world there, and happily that really happened. And we were all contributing in every single way, including creatively. What we had to find was that world, and our way into the world of that piece, because it was a very personal piece for Kat, and she was our way in. And so we used her very much as our sounding board, and listened a lot to what she had to say. And it was also a memory piece. And so we took our cues from that. And all of us contributed to the research and to discovering music and images and all kinds of things. And that was a lot of fun. That was really, the process was fabulous that way. We had a great time. And so I learned a lot, and then at certain points, I knew when to step back, when the director needed to work with his actors technically, and also as a director works with an actor, because that doesn't change. You're doing theater, you're doing TV, you're still talking about actions and what are you doing, and basic technical, acting work and things like that. So there was a whole period of technical stuff that we stepped back from, and then we came back in and out of that process, and then putting it together and looking at it at various times, and all of us, talking about, and our opinions and our thoughts on different parts of it. And it was just a terrific collaboration. And I have to say that everybody was very open to everybody else's opinions, and we were able to work with that. And it was a wonderful time.
Great. I have a great segue then.
Okay.
Having gone through this process, is there anything that you've learned that you would do differently if you had an opportunity to do it over or for your next project? Who would like to go first?
More money.
Oh, money.
Actually, we didn't you didn't mention that. I mean, one of the things that the producers were tasked with was to keep an eye on the budget. With what budget? I know not what budget, but it's like there was no budget, but there was some budget. I mean, I needed to they needed to tell me if anything was going to cost more money than we were anticipating. I needed to know what things were going to cost. A lot of it's very parallel to what you do when you're producing a play. So much of it is.
Okay.
Well, it was also nice to be able to tap into other production budgets, when you realize, that was nice. It felt like we were working as a real cohesive team, and to be able to do that was very helpful.
Yes.
I was going to also say, to the previous point, I found that the Technologists became similar to your DP, right? Your director of photography, but yet in a theater
Should
sense.
probably go on up the division.
What was that?
What was that?
We were Potomac, I want to say.
Oh, I think someone does.
Somebody's- I got it.
Jeffrey.
There, I
you,
just muted him.
Yeah, so it, and we're more in television and film, it's really the editor and the DP that ultimately create the experience, so that's a little bit different, although this is a theater medium, it does lend itself more to that sort of television and film aesthetic.
Okay.
I'm going to push everybody back to Mary's question in a second. I just want to bring Maureen in. Because Maureen, you worked on how many shows?
4 shows mainly, and just helped a little bit with gathering information like the bios and the photos and putting them all in Google Docs, which I'd never used before. So to me, it was a delightful opportunity to meet a lot of new people and work a little bit with them and learn some new technology. And everybody was great and very patient, because some of the technology wasn't all that easy in terms of just getting everything together.
Mhm.
Learned a lot from Iben too.
We all did.
Who didn't? Yeah.
Okay. All right. Back to the question. Does it need to be repeated? What did you learn through this process that you would do over again if you had a chance, or you will do differently on the next project?
I have 2 things. The first thing is make sure that your first reading of the play is not your assumption of how long it is. I was pleasantly surprised by how much longer the piece was when performed at the pace of however the performer does it. Then
Which one is this? Which one is this you're talking about?
this was Change of Plans. We had read it and it was 12 minutes. We had cut it from 15 to 12 and we thought, great, we're done. And then we finished filming and editing and it was 18 minutes and we were like, whoa, okay, what happened? So, and the tricky part at that point was that it's filmed. So there was some stuff that we could cut, but then there was some stuff where if we cut it, like if we were cutting in the middle of a scene, then it means there'd be a break in the scene and then it would throw off sort of the editing. And so there was some stuff that we were able to trim and reorder. And our technologist on that one in particular, Andrea, who is amazing. If anyone ever wants to work with her, she's incredible. She found ways to kind of rework a couple things. And so there's a lot of discussion after filming about ways that we could trim stuff and tighten stuff and speed things up and rework some stuff. So anyway, so make sure you know what your timing is at the beginning. That's the one thing. And then the other thing was watching the benefit. There were so many things like a Game Boy blew my mind. I was like, I didn't even know you could do anything like that. So, watching the benefit, there were so many parts where I was just like, wow, I didn't even realize that was an option for us. And now it'd be so cool to like go back and find ways to do that. So so just there's Zoom theater has so many possibilities and it's cool to explore. So
You don't have to buy a couch, you just have to photograph one. So,
Exactly. What I thought was interesting, and it was part of my plan, and I didn't know that it was going to work, was putting together 6 different teams with the hope that they were going to come up with 6 different creative approaches to working with virtual, and they did. They did. I mean, every one of the shows could learn from another show. I bet there's something in every one of those shows that one of the other shows would have said, "Oh, I would have done that if I'd known how. I would have done that."
yeah, it was exceptional. All right, who else in terms of learning something different, to do it differently, or for the next project?
I don't know. Out of Order was such a great play for this medium, you know, and I know that was part of Kat's thinking. So we were very lucky that way, that, you know, Jonathan was talking about doing a reading, and we didn't do a reading. Scheduling was, you know, really tough. And that's something I would work on next time for sure. And, you know, time limits and scheduling and getting people in the same Zoom at the same time. And we wanted to make sure we had enough time to, you know, give Iben and Glenn time to do all the technical stuff that was so important, you know, and even with so many other things at the same time. So good scheduling is really paramount. It sounds very dry and businesslike, but it makes a huge difference. Then you can actually, have some expansive time to think and work, and then we can all get back together and all the things, you know, you can get that great arc that you really need to produce and you know, find the art in what you're doing. So sometimes a tight schedule is good. It makes you cope. It makes you deal. And but you know, every time is very different, just like in theater or whatever we do, which is great. But I would say scheduling is something that is very much on my radar right now.
Okay, that's great.
And can I just jump in and say that one of the things I learned, because I consider myself as a panelist at this point, one of the things I learned that I kind of knew anyway was that it doesn't matter as much as people think it does in terms of how long you run, how long something takes to put on. What matters is keeping people engaged. I was sweating bullets because I had originally scheduled this to run 70 minutes. The maximum time, that running time for the plays was going to be 70 minutes because of all the other things that I knew that were going to go into it. And I was pushing people pretty hard to get their timings down. And it was really awkward for me, but I felt it was necessary. Well, as it turned out, we ran well over what was anticipated. I thought we would come in at 90 minutes. We came in at 1 hour and 45. Nobody complained to me. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody said you can't have a benefit run that long. Before we did it, everybody was saying, keep it to 1 hour, keep it to 1 hour. I kept hearing this as a mantra, keep it to 1 hour, keep it to 1 hour. I finally decided I can't keep it to 1 hour. I will compromise. I'll do it an hour. As long as it runs less than 90 minutes, I'll feel like I did what I was supposed to do. Well, it didn't. It ran 1 hour and 45. And it was engaging, and it kept people's interest, and nobody complained about it being long. So that's a lesson for all of us. When people write a really long play and somebody says your play's too long, maybe it depends on how it plays. If the play happens to run 2.5 hours, but it keeps everybody riveted for the entire time, that's the length it's supposed. Edward Albee, I was a guest of Edward's many years ago at his foundation. He used to say, a play needs to be as long as it needs to be. That's what he said. There's no rule about how long a play should be. It's whatever time you need in order to tell the story that you want to tell. Iben.
I mean, just think about Les Miserables. How many complaints how long that really is? Not many.
Les Mis, yeah, I mean, it's just, and I've seen it 4 times. How many hours of my life is that?
I mean, it's a bloody long play.
And a lot of people were loving it so much that I think if anything, some of the people said they're disappointed. They were hoping there was more. That's how good it was.
For TRUSpeak.
Yeah, the quality of the work was terrific. Which, does anybody have any Anything to add though to the other question? Because there's some more questions. Anybody want to add anything?
Well, that was my answer to your question of what I would do differently.
Okay, okay. We'll leave it with you then, and we're going to the next question.
Well, we have some questions from the audience. So, Jesley, first of all, can you keep an eye on whether people are asking questions? And you can pop in and say, Bob, there's a question, or you know, you can alert us to something. But I saw Pat Addis raise her hand.
Yes. One of the problems was getting your tickets. I tried and they wanted me to log in, and they made such an annoyance that I finally did not buy a ticket. I wasn't going to be able to watch it because it was my grandson's birthday and we had to go to a birthday party. But I was really annoyed. And I mean, not being able to buy a ticket and give you money is not a good thing. So I think I would re-evaluate those people and not making people log in.
Okay, so let me explain that to you, Pat, and you're not going to like the answer. I can't do it differently than that because it's all for security reasons. When you're doing something on Zoom, you can be open to what's called Zoom bombing, and it's important to find some way of doing it so that you can avoid having people crash your event and cause a problem. So, and even you also you dealt with the registration issue as well.
Yes, I mean
Zoom requires it. You can't do it without it.
Well, I've been on other things where I paid money and I did not have that problem. So,
Pat, you're right. As in, there are other platforms that would allow us not to have to do that. One of the reasons why we ended up with a Zoom webinar for the performance was because up until I think 2 weeks before the event, we had planned on having talkbacks. People were still trying to cut their pieces back so we would have time to run a very short talkback after each performance. And so that was part of the requirements for this event because it was a mixture between live and pre-recorded. And for that, it was unusual. Most of the stuff that you see, Pat, online is either pre-recorded or live. Not a lot of it is actually mixed up as we did in TRUSpeak. And you know, it is with this as it is with any projects, you know, in theater or out elsewhere, is that there comes a time where there's a point of no return. You just have to go with where you are and then move forward. So I apologize that you got into that situation.
Pat, are you still there?
She's there.
yes, I'm still there.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining. You know, I just think you have to make it as easy as possible for people to spend their money.
Agreed.
I even got a ticket and still was not able to get in. I had to watch it later on the
Who is that?
Peggy.
Oh, Peggy Ching. Oh, you know, we're all learning. We're just all learning. It's a learning curve, and we're trying to do the best we can. 192 people actually made it in. So if there are 10 that didn't, that's really a shame, and I feel badly about it. But 192 did get in. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry to those who didn't make it. Well, this turned into a bummer. Okay.
Okay. All right, let's pick it up. Okay. Is there anything you've learned from virtual theater that you would apply to the staged theater when going forward? Is this Dump the Stars?
I'm trying to think through that question for myself.
Okay, if there is, there may not be.
It wouldn't change what people have been doing before, but I certainly would be a little bit more comfortable bringing filmed elements into a stage production, having had a little bit of experience with it, being forced to do that for the virtual presentation. I think it helped all of us understand a little bit more about how film can work as a visual medium that communicates a theater experience. It would depend on the project, Murray.
Mhm.
Sure, something might come up and we would go, wow, what I did on that virtual thing I did last year, that would sure work here. Well, let's try that.
Okay, Maureen, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I thought of two things. One is the power of having up close, facial visuals of people.
Yeah.
So maybe I bring people up into the edge of the stage closer to the audience in a lot more scenes. But also I'd like to see what would happen if we use virtual backgrounds on stages with huge rear screen projections. I've seen that done at Radio City Music Hall, and I objected to it actually at the time I saw it about 7 or 8 years ago. But having seen how quickly you can change virtual backgrounds in this medium, I think it would be interesting to use some rear screen projection on a stage, and it might cut the costs of sets and make some things more producible at a cheaper price.
Something I've learned from
Yeah.
set designers: projections do not cost less than actually built sets.
Expensive, yeah.
Yeah, I think Beetlejuice had elaborate video aids, maybe.
As had Mean
and-
Girls.
and
Most-
Anastasia.
Yeah, and Mean Girls as well. Yeah,
And Anastasia.
and very effectively.
Yeah, I think that's being done more and more. I understand that the most recent West Side Story had a lot of it. I didn't get a chance to see it, and I've done plays and operas. I did Murder on the Orient Express, where the entire set was, images and moving images with just some furniture and great lighting design. Of course, you need that. But I have been thinking, and that was my question to everybody, is how do you think that, what we're starting to learn, because we're certainly not there yet, with all the stuff that we're doing, Zoom and StreamYard and all the various streaming stuff, is going to be incorporated or affect what we do if and when we open again? I'm curious as to how that might even change what we've already done in theater with filmic techniques and things like that. I think,
Ralph Lewis says we're all becoming Ivan von Hove.
yeah, right. Yeah.
That's it. I wanted to say something though about what. Well, let's go to what you said. Anybody want to answer what Claudia said? Someone answer something that Maureen said.
I mean, we've started talking about it already, but yeah.
I was gonna say, go ahead, Maureen.
Just quickly, I think it'll provide us a medium, the do Zoom plays, to market our stuff overseas to people that you never would have really had a chance or wouldn't want to read a script long distance, but they click online and see something like this and get a feel for the show.
The thing I wanted to say that I was thinking about when you were talking about it, Maureen, about the intimacy of the close-ups in Zoom is different. When you project somebody's face on a stage 10 feet high, it's not intimate. It gets a little scary, actually. It's for different effects. I think that the intimacy of Zoom is unique to Zoom. I mean, the intimacy of virtual theater is unique to virtual theater. There is a definite emphasis on the face. As an actor, you have to be very aware of your face, of where you're looking, your focus. Things read very big when your face is on a Zoom screen. Iben.
I recently worked with Triangle Theatre to produce a live Zoom performance where one of the plays was two-hander, someone who was stuck on the side of a cliff. And we instructed her, that actor, to, sort of be like this and be scared. But one of the things, because she was still holding on to the cliff, one of the things that we, Eloane Castle, who was the director and artistic director, and I afterwards talked about, was that when you perform on a virtual platform like Zoom or StreamYard or the other ones, because you are so close to the camera, you have to pull it back a bit. You can't do stage acting. You have to be a little less scared in the face and more scared in the eye, so to speak.
Acting. It all falls on the actor's part. It's a lot of that. It really is.
Well, the poor actors, in a way, that has to do this, they also have to be their own tech. And your guy, Neil Davidson, knows that a lot, is that, and, you know, Regina Taylor, you know, Stephanie's friend, learned that a lot. I mean, she moved her own dining room table to make room for us to have all the various pieces in place for us and able to just film her. And she kept bumping her head into her you know, lighting in the dining room table that was supposed to be over the dining room table. And it was just, we have different challenges doing this. And I feel that some of it we'll get around to be good at, and others will, you know, we'll have to say, okay, this is a temporary thing that we're doing because we can't do anything permanent yet, you know, on a stage. But at least I think it teaches us to think outside the box, not just the Zoom box, but all the boxes.
Well, the controversial thing that you asked, Murray, was what have we learned from virtual that we would bring to live?
Right.
And I don't think I would note that until I got there. My assumptions are that we're thinking we have to think within the medium that we're working in. What have we brought from live theater to our presentations? I think we brought more from film to what we did in the benefit than we did from live theater.
Right. Well, that also opens up the question of what is the next thing you'd like to explore going forward with virtual theater? Because virtual theater is here to stay on some level. So the question is, from everything you guys have done, what do you see as the next thing that you could be doing on the virtual theater to move it from what it was, which was just a box and a head, to what you ended up doing, which was phenomenal?
Well, someone mentioned it in the chat, and I think even at one point you brought it up as well, but we just didn't have the time or to do it. And that would be to have, you know, multiple angles, you know, more than one camera, you know, things like that. So it's not just the head-on kind of a approach to it.
I would say that I see the possibility of live theater, people creating things for live theater that are about the virtual experience. And in that case, I can see a crossover. I can see where people would find things to do to kind of remind us of this terrible year, which we tried to make a little less terrible by being creative and finding ways to make things work. I'm kind of stuck on this. I'm not sure. Does anybody in our audience have any thoughts about that? I know lots of people are warning against trying to apply too much film work to live performance because it can be very distracting if it's not done well. I've heard people that have embraced West Side Story, but I've also seen a lot of people who just found it just impossible to keep focus. It becomes a double focus. If you've got an actor on stage and you've got a picture of the actor projected 6 feet behind them,
distracting.
It can be distracting. Somebody brilliant can probably find a way of really making the focus clear so that we know what we're supposed to be looking at. I remember, you want to talk about virtual backgrounds, A Woman in White. Does anybody remember the musical Woman in White? Oh my God, the whole thing was a virtual experience. It was a 3D virtual experience. And I got a headache from it. I sat there like, my game for 2.5 hours was, I was playing Find the Singer. It's like, I try to find the singer on the stage. I kept looking, like, where is she? Where is she? It's like, where's Waldo? So you can't overdo it.
No. Okay, Pat, you had your hand up.
Yes. One way that Zoom can be appropriate for theater is if you have a guest from Australia or England or some, and you want them to be on your show, and you can have a different guest. I mean, depending upon the show and whether it works for that particular show, but it is something that you can easily do now. You can Zoom people in from all over the world to be on your show, and a different person every night, if it fits in with what you're doing. But that is an option that Zoom is allowing people to do. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh, yeah, I do. Yes, I think we all do. Yes.
Yeah.
June?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned this a couple of weeks back, but I highly recommend people going over to the Irish Rep site. They have an online virtual theater productions there, and Touch of the Poet, unbelievable what they've been doing. And it just made me, they're out of the boxes. And I just feel that it would be great to talk to, what's her name? The woman the artistic director of Irish Rep.
Charlotte.
And I also,
Charlotte.
yes, I also can recommend, if anybody wants to email me, when I did my show, Jerry Duncan, we had a guy named Rod Weber who was really good at doing all these new things. And I'd be glad to, share his information because it is so different. But there's a lot that can be done.
Touch of the Poet was an incredible editing job because all the actors had to film themselves, and how they showed one scene, Bob Cuccioli. The only part was when somebody went to kiss someone, they sort of missed the person, but when they were walking in and out of the door into the bar, into the living room.
Right? Yeah. It was beautiful.
Really
but
well.
they also did Meet Me in St. Louis. They did a musical, and I don't know how they did it. They actually matched the music worked with the film.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I have a question I want to pose to the tech people, which we didn't ask. Did you actually have artistic input, or did it come primarily from the producer and the director, which it would in theater? Can you, for the people that tech on the shows, on our shows?
I think kind of to what Stephanie was saying earlier, she was saying we do function more as a DP, which was not like what I went in thinking. I was thinking, I'm going to edit the thing that's given to me, or like tell them that they can't film this thing on Zoom. But it did end up being a lot more collaborative in terms of, well, because I do have a film background, I was able to say, well, what if we do it this way? Which like, you're not thinking of it, but put that little thing out there and then they can say yes or no. And so I think there was a lot of conversation back and forth in terms of, I think it was like super, super collaborative. And of course the director kind of had the final say, but there was some part of say where I could, like, if I couldn't edit it, then it's not an option, and to some degree there's a limit that's put by my ability to edit it. So I think, I would say it was super collaborative.
The directors last week, several of them indicated that they found completely different ways of thinking of how to do this because of the input from the tech people. Yeah. So I think the directors would support you in saying, yes, you were very much of a creative collaborator.
Peggy?
I would definitely say that I was a major collaborator with Claudia, Glenn, and TCAT. And even in a women's perspective, we had discussions about how can we do this, how can we not do this. So, which was based on my abilities, as Carley was saying, what can be done. I know that Van Dirk shows me because he asked me point blank, can you make ghosts? And I said, yes.
As long as you don't become one.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a big leap. I mean, if you read A Woman's Perspective, I think only Van would have come up with the approach to it that he came up with. It was a unique director's vision of a piece. I don't think it was anything that Melvina was expecting, and yes, it all emanated from his need for ghosts in each of the scenes. He didn't want them to be offstage voices. He said this last week. He did not want them to be offstage voices. He wanted them to be physical, though translucent, appearances within the film. And you were able to say, Iben, you were saying, yes, I know how to do that. That was the point. That was the point of having a technologist there to begin with. I can do that. I can't do that. I got to ask somebody else. Whatever it is, whatever the answer is.
Well, that's why the first meet and greet that we did, where we got to kind of interview with the different teams, was really important, because I think I went into certain rooms and I said, like, I really can't produce a musical. Like, I can't edit a musical. I don't know that much about sound editing. And we were able to make really good matches based not just on creative interests, but on like, are our skills a good match? So I thought that process was really great, Bob.
Iben, can you tell people how you created the ghosts? A lot of what we get into here in the community gathering is the how-to. My community, they're not audience members. They're active producers. They're active theater collaborators, and they want to know how to do it.
Okay, how to do it. Ooh. Well, generally speaking, and I want to acknowledge that after me, Peggy Kane should come on, because she's had her hand up for a long time.
Peggy.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not seeing hand raises. I need the virtual hand raises so I can tell.
Yeah. The ghost was basically, we filmed it on green screen. I blocked them out, and then I made them see-through. But just making them see-through is not enough. So I made them sort of simmer, which meant that sometimes it was like 2% see-through, sometimes it was like 25% see-through. And I did it at different points as well in the timeline. When you're editing, you have a timeline. So basically it would flicker, it would look like they're coming on, and until you have the footage, you don't know exactly at what point you're going to do what. But for instance, for the Sandro, it was also timed with the music that we put into the piece as well. And that actually, the music and the audio piece of what you can do in post-editing is hugely important, because you can create so much atmosphere and so much environment just by audio.
Fabulous. Okay, Peggy and then Walter.
Okay, thank you.
Peggy, unmute. Peggy? Peggy, unmute.
Most people are making the analogy with film, but I think there's maybe even a closer analogy with television production and the multi-camera sitcom way of doing things. I mean, I think that the virtual Zoom thing could really benefit from that.
Wait, can you talk loud? Come closer to the mic. Peggy?
Okay, I think there's a closer analogy than film with the television industry and their multi-camera sitcom way of doing things. And I think that a lot could be used from that MO for virtual Zoom.
Good point.
So actually, I'd like to convert that into a question for Iben and Carley. How would you create the equivalent of a multi-camera shoot for somebody who's using their iPhone at home making footage for us?
I think we actually did that. We did that.
No, this is the how-to.
So Carl, you take that.
Well, I think the big limiter there was if they had two phones or an iPad. And one of the big limiters was like, how different are the qualities if we're switching between an iPad footage and a phone footage? Are they going to look super different? And is that going to be okay? Is that an artistic choice, or is that just not going to look right? So that was something. I know that we used a phone in one room, and then Katie Huffman exited the room and was like speaking kind of off screen, but we wanted a close-up of her face, so we had her iPad in there. And on top of this, they could not memorize. We weren't allowed to require them to memorize their scripts. So she would go out of the room. There's a script behind the iPad. She's reading off the script, and then she comes back into the room, and there's another script hidden in the other room next to the other camera. So there was a lot of hoops to jump through on this one, but it was basically besides that, it was basically just a regular 2-camera setup where, you have two things. One is hopefully close up, one is wider, and you're hoping to get coverage so that way in any moment you have what you need to tell the story.
You know, Katie loved doing this. She's told me she loved it.
Great.
That's
This is
great.
It was great.
With Maggie Bird, we did the same thing. She had a whole host of iPhones to her disposal. So we had two phones set up at the same time, one being really far away, one much closer and slightly off the side. And we had a third phone that took her audio that was sitting inside her iPad, which we, became a prop, but, it could have been used to also record her. And I know for instance, in Change of Plan, the iPad that the actor was walking around with when she was moving herself from room to room inside her apartment was used as the camera as well. I mean, it was a prop, but it was also her camera. So that is definitely something that you don't get on TV. What's important when you do TV compared to, say, film is that you have 3 cameras running at the same time. So which means that when you capture the same acting from 3 different angles, and then you can cut between them seamlessly because you have the audio in its own track, and it's just you matches to that. And that way it won't feel disjointed. We couldn't quite achieve that because we basically don't have the budget for that. We didn't have the time or the budget for that. But, if you have that, that's the beauty about TV. You can capture more. You don't have to have as much rehearsal. You can capture more raw performances, longer segments as well, because you can always, if something sort of obscures one camera, you'll have 2 other cameras you can go to for when you edit it afterwards. It's a completely different thing with film. You have one camera and you move it and everything has to go back to the same thing. I remember at one point I was on set and this, red camera, which is like $40,000 equipment, one camera, was sitting there it had its own safety guard, actually, one guy that just looked after that, and it had to be set up every single time. So everyone else had to go back, including putting the food back for they were eating. It's a breakfast buffet, and it had to be exactly the same. So that's why you have so many people in a film situation where that actually takes care. You just take shots of what's there so you can remember to put it back, and you don't miss it suddenly in the middle of the buffet. You're missing a piece of bread. It's a different technique.
Well, that's why you have somebody or at least one person who's just the continuity person for that. And famous bloopers are all about that,
Yep.
how they miss things or added things or forgot things. Suddenly the cigarette is half smoked and a minute ago it was, down to the nub, and then the next shot it's back magically. So yeah, that kind of stuff is really tough.
Right.
Tough.
Walter, are you still there? Do you still want to talk? Where are you?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry I was a little bit late. First of all, I want to say that I've had some amazing good fortune with my iPad and iPhone as cameras, such that, well, you remember the presidential campaign. I did a commercial with my 9-year-old son, just using the iPad and my iPhone for sound, understand? And it got on the NBC affiliate down here in Montgomery, Alabama on TV for 10 plays. And it shows the power that has been taken from, the studio. You have to have a, NBC or, Fox or whatever, and you can do it in your home. Do you know what I mean? It's a tremendous power that we have right in front of us. But anyway, here's my question. I'm so grateful for this. Iben, so I have this opportunity, Monday, August 12th, I have a 750-seat theater on Martha's Vineyard between 12 noon and like 12 midnight, you know what I mean? To do excerpts from a new musical that I've developed. And I'm wondering, what I was thinking of is doing this with a screen in the theater, but then have 25% audience, you know, to be safe, but run it like a movie schedule, like, you know, show at 12, 2, 4, 6, 8, you know, like that, understand? With 25% audience, you know, socially distanced. But here's the question I have. Do I need to do like a movie, or am I limited in quality with a screen, but doing it like Zoom? Do you understand in that space?
Yes, I think I do. We are limited by what is the medium that the audience sees it on.
Right.
But that shouldn't stop you from producing a better quality. So for instance, for TRUSpeak, we knew that ended up in Zoom being the platform that everybody consumed TRUSpeak at, that they would not be able to get it more than 720p. But that didn't stop us from doing 1080 as in HD quality. So every single piece that was shown was actually shown in HD. And if we've had a you know, the high-end account, we could probably have shown it in HD. But basically, you have to go with what you think is the right thing. And these days, more and more people will be able to see and consume in HD format or even larger. I mean, it depends if you have a smart screen, you know, all of that.
Yeah. And the green screen, that's something, is that something that I can rent, or I have to go to a green screen studio?
That depends again how big you want the green screen. For one of the shows, the Out of Order one that was written by TCAT, we had one actor in Maggie Bird in California. She had a huge green screen, and we were able to. I showed some pictures last time. We were able to, you know, sort of put stuff under it and drape it over it and that kind of thing. But you know, you can also get away with a 6 feet wide. So again, it depends on what it is that you want to do.
And that can be rented, that the green screen can be rented?
It can be, but you can get a decent green screen out of Amazon for, Stephanie, less than $30, right?
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. Because we do have the main character takes a drug overdose and dies. So we follow him in the after death experience.
I just want to jump in at 6:04.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
So
that's okay.
yeah. I also want to just verify the fact that the non-existent budget that I was talking about, most of it was for green screens. A majority of what we spent money on was green screens. Someday I'd like to see those green screens. Oh well. Anyway, any other questions from the room? Because we can wrap up and we can go into breakout rooms for those of you who like to do that. For those of you who like that sort of thing. Do you know where your virtual hand raise is? Because I'm going crazy. I can't actually find anybody's visual hand raise because of the way I'm set up.
I can't find, I tried.
In reactions at the bottom, there's reactions, and if you click on reactions, it says raise hand. If you have a different version of Zoom, you go into participants. Into participants function at the bottom, there should be a hand raise, and I see Sam Burland has a hand raise. So we have one virtual hand raise. So Sam, what's your question?
You were talking about doing like LED walls in back of actors. There are different resolutions of LED walls that you can use to give the appearance of like someone actually being in the room with you. Or a background that looks so real that you think it's actually part of the background, really a set. Or video projection, there's different resolutions to increase the quality of the image. So you can start out with low res to high to 4K to 8K video projection. So everybody has a different budget for what they can afford for the quality of the image they want to use on a stage.
Okay, Lee Roscoe, I see you have a hand raise. Would you like to ask something?
Yeah, your lighting for the green screen, was that part of your budget? What type of lights did you use? How much did they cost? Where can you get them?
Let me say this. I was prepared to pay for ring lights if people needed them. So it was in my mental budget, but the producers managed to solve the lighting issues for almost everybody. Most people had ring lights. Correct me if I'm wrong, producers.
Yeah, I for the most part, I think maybe for our teams, we had to purchase maybe one ring light. And you know, most actors these days, because we have to self-tape, we have all that equipment, the ring lights and everything, you know, to do our auditions these days. But yeah, but ring lights. Even did anyone use like the pillow lights, the side lighting?
No, we
No.
never got around to that. I do know that one of our victims in a women's perspective had his own lights of that. So two of them actually had really decent light, because one of the things I said to, which is it maybe not is a known thing. Once you have a green screen actually needs its own light. You can't just have one light on the person and then assume that everything behind you is lighted up as well. The green screen in the case here is actually an actor in its own right. It just gets removed out of it, but it's providing the basis for whatever is going on as well.
I just want to say to everybody, because we haven't talked about some of the details of this, and these weekly meetings to some degree need to be how-tos. They really do need to be a how-to session. If you're planning to do anything sophisticated to any degree with virtual, and I do think that what we did was sophisticated to a degree. You have to be prepared from the beginning, and I was prepared from the beginning to provide whatever green screens were needed and whatever ring lights were needed. If you have a bigger budget than we had, which was basically nothing, then you also want to have a technologist to talk about the best mic, the best Wi-Fi connection. We didn't even talk about Wi-Fi connection. You have to make sure that everybody that's filming themselves has a decent Wi-Fi connection so that there's no lag. We actually had some lag in some of the things that we presented, and it was going to be too time consuming to sync up the visual and the lips to get it lip synced. But nobody complained about that. Everybody forgave that. But if you want to be really perfectionist about it, you have to be prepared for all of these possible technical issues. Yes.
Just really quickly, and I have to go too, but I discovered something roundabout as far as equipment goes and how important a good mic is as well. Iben, can you talk quickly, and so us lay folks can understand, about the compression of sound that you get from an iPhone? And I know we were talking about, ultimately our lag issues and sync issues, and can you just speak to that very quickly?
Yes, I can.
Thanks.
When a smartphone has a brilliant camera and a very decent microphone. The problem is a smartphone normally also needs to have space for all the files and all the film you're taking. So basically all smartphones are compressing files, which means the way they compress the files to make them smaller is to take out all the emptiness, so to speak, which means that the syncing of both film as well as audio is not easy to do if you put it into a professional editing tool like what Carley and I was using. Carley used Premiere, right? And I use Final Cut Pro. So basically, because once you have a decent professional editing tool, it wants every single second to be the same length. And iPhones and other phones don't do that for the files of audio or film.
You want to use a separate mic from what you're using for your video?
Yes.
Right.
Or you need to convert it after the fact.
Yeah, the workflow changes for editors when you're working for from iPhones. So there's things that I think both Iben and I learned that we probably could have answered earlier. There are like very technical editing things that we would do different next time, I think, because we learned like this syncing issue is not something we normally deal with, but it's very specific to this medium.
Yeah, I also learned that the hard way, right, Iben, right? Because I thought I was helping. Because, you know, the fact that Regina had to learn 5 speeches, long speeches, we opted to have her do some as voiceover and some, and because of the, I guess it's the ruling that the actors don't necessarily have to memorize their lines, we actually had Regina use a teleprompter in her phone. But the application that we had would have the logo, the watermark of the app at the bottom of the picture. So I thought I was doing Iben a favor, and I edited that because everything was sent to me, that I would send it to Iben. So I edited the logo watermark out, but when it got to her, then it was out of sync, right? The voice, the sound, and the picture was then out of sync.
Yeah,
right?
and it was also out of proportion. So which meant that I had to blow up a bit. So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, we've all learned a lot that iPhones and the MacGyvering we did to get TRUSpeak up is fantastic, but as Carley was saying, we need to make sure that the tech is done up front. That was even more important than I knew it was going to be, because I received one of my footages came in what is called wide gamut, which was, one of the really new phones that iPhone has, iPhone 12. It can film outside what you normally see on a computer, and that's what I got, because that's what you need to go to film quality level of color. So it's, it has been massively interesting, and it has taken a lot of sleep.
Yeah.
And then I would do wrong and would do differently next time, Mary. Just to
I was just going to say, you made me happy because now my question finally got answered.
And Iben, then can you speak to Iben also? There was an issue with footage being texted, right? As opposed to being emailed.
When you, the same thing happens, and that goes back to Claudia's question, is that we really need to, how we transfer the file that comes from the actor's location to the editor's location needs to be solid. You cannot just nilly-willy say, okay, I'm going to text this, because again, with phones, everything got compressed, including, so a lot of these things that are needed in post-editing was gone. So it's like, oh, okay. I mean, and you can't, if you haven't got it, you cannot put it back in. It's like, getting a haircut, and then, just because you cut more, it doesn't mean that the hair gets longer. And we needed the long hair to get, to do the nice haircut.
We have a question from Peggy Chain. Peggy?
I wondered, every once in a while on the left-hand side of the screen, there was a small little white bubble that popped out. What was that? It was consistent throughout the whole show. It was very small. It was the size of the little red recording dot that's up here. It was that size. But it would pop out from the left-hand margin, every few seconds.
Was it like any specific place on the left margin?
At a consistent.
Like midway or something?
It was right in the middle of the screen, in the middle of what was being projected. But it seemed to be at a regular pace, and it was throughout the whole show.
Well, you win. You found the white dot. So remember, we owe Peggy Chain a great big prize.
A trip around the world.
One of the things that is also important to remember when you produce something like TRUSpeak is that we have, what we talked about mostly tonight is about how we got those 6 pieces together. But there's also the whole other technical issue is how we get it out to people. And it could also, that's a couple of additional layers of technology that needs to fit together with what we have. So I'll have to go back now, Peggy, and see if I can find that white dot.
Yeah, we're all gonna go. We're all gonna look for the white dot now.
It on YouTube, because remember, I couldn't get on the night of the.
Oh, it's on YouTube. Oh, it was.
It on YouTube. I
Oh.
couldn't get on for the gala.
Let me check. I can check that out. I'll see what it is. It might be something embedded in
It
YouTube.
all popped out, you know, like half an inch, if that. But it was consistent.
Well, as long as it was consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
It didn't spoil my enjoyment.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. You didn't have any problem buying tickets, I hope.
I didn't have any problem buying tickets. I had problem getting on.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much that we have to learn and do better. Well, Murray, I think what we're going to do is breakout rooms now. So I want to thank you for co-hosting with me. I want to thank my guests, my technicians, Iben Cenholt and Carley Santori, my producers, Stephanie Pope Lofgren, Claudia Zahn, Jonathan Hogue, and Maureen Condon. And thank you, everybody in the True community, for being with us yet again. I think this must be like our 50th one or our 48th one or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to count them. Actually, I keep meaning to count them. Post benefit, we're actually feeling pretty good. You don't have to worry about True closing. We're healthy and we're sound, and we also got our PPP loan from the government. So everything's looking very, very solid for us. So we can be here for you every week, and we will continue to be here for you every week. I ask you one thing: don't take us for granted. It's not always as stable as it is right now. It just happens to be a stable moment for us. So continue to support us when you can. Continue to think of us when you're thinking about supporting not-for-profits that you would admire or that you benefit from. Be there for us so that we can be there for you. That's it, everybody. And next week, oh my God, did anybody see what I got coming next week? I got 4 top literary agents. So writers, please stop salivating. Okay. So I've got Beth Blickers, Samara Harris, Susan Gurman, and Michael Moore all coming. Don't ask me how. I invited Beth Blickers. She invited everyone else. So we got 4 top literary agents. So you got to be here next week, and you got to hear what's going on from their point of view.